Welcome to the Life Success and Legacy Podcast. We're glad you're here, and we hope you enjoy the episode.
Hey, everybody. We want to welcome you back to this episode of the Life Success Legacy Podcast. I am Chris Bay, joined by some lovely human beings that I got to spend last week with in person, eyes and arms, hugs, sharing laughs, meals, and learning together. Hey, everybody. How are you?
Hey.
Awesome.
Good. Everybody a little tired this week?
There were tears.
What was that, Pay?
I said, don't forget the tears. It's always tears.
Right. There were tears as well, because we do that. So we had the opportunity to come together at the annual Nelson Nash Institute think tank. And I'm going to ask Mike Everett here in just a moment to kind of define and capture for listeners what is the think tank. But this happens each year. My very first think tank was in 2012, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't even licensed yet. And I was still working in my W-2 job and had the opportunity to go. Mike Everett invited me, and it was a really great learning experience. And we'll get into that a little bit more later as we discuss. So we've got some of our usual team members who are able to attend. We've got a couple that were not able to join us for this podcast. But we also asked Pei, Mike Kwong's wife. Hi, Pei.
Hi there.
We asked Pei to join us because she's not a practitioner. She's not an agent. She was there as a client getting to learn, and we thought that would be an interesting perspective to add to the conversation. So thanks, everybody, for being a part of this. Mike Everett, for our listeners, will you give some context and some history of how did this think tank come to be? How have you seen it evolve over the years? What is the purpose of the think tank?
Well, if I would have attended every single one of the think tanks, I missed two in the last 20 years. And, but if we go back now, we used to do two a year. We called them Think Tank One and Mastermind. It was a kind of a dual thing. But I remember the very first one I went to was in February of 2006. I had literally switched jobs. I can't even really remember now. It seems like it's been forever ago, but I had switched jobs because I read this crazy book called Becoming Your Own Banker. And the very first one I went to, we were in the back room. I'm going to say the back room of a Holiday Inn Express. And the room was so small, and there were 45 of us in this room. And all we did was we listened to Nelson for 2 solid days teach his 10-hour seminar on becoming your own banker. And then, of course, as this thing has evolved, people were wanting to know how to utilize the book, how to do spreadsheets, how to have conversations, how to talk to people about policy premiums and policy loans and policy loan repayments. I mean, there were a number of different things. And then, as time has gone on, I'm going to go all the way up to now, and then I'm going to go all the way back. Nothing has changed. It is really all the same message. It's just that we have learned how to share the message at table level so clients can actually have some tangible takeaways so they can learn how to apply the concept, learn how to utilize their system at the highest level. But when we're talking about the original 45 people, the thing grew relatively quick. And I'm going to say probably by 08, 09, we had somewhere between 300 and 400 people showing up in Birmingham, Alabama. And this is before the NNI. Keep that in mind. This was literally a come one, come all. People were starting to think about this and how this could affect, change, grow their personal practices. Now we get into the NNI, which, if I had to just be 100% honest, I kind of fought it for a little bit. I know everybody on this call knows this, but I am not a rule follower. And so what happened was they took my big wide lane of IBC and they closed it down, and we started creating rules of how to become a practitioner, why we did certain things. And of course, in the early ongoings, the only reason I became a practitioner was for one reason and one reason only.
Nelson Nash.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really the guiding principle for almost everything I did with IBC. And it still is, because of what Nelson has done for Mike Everett and his family and every other generation. So this whole thing has been I'll use the word that it's been a dance. It literally has been a dance that we are all learning to dance to the same music, to the same song, to the same message. And as this thing has happened, we continue to go. And why do we continue to go? Because we need refreshing just like everybody else. Mm-hmm. We need to have that touch of other people who do what we do. We have an obligation to share what we do with other people. So there is a lot of camaraderie. There is a lot of sharing back and forth. There's a lot of, the hows, whens, whys of IBC when you go to the think tank. And it's, you can only imagine this. I came home completely jazzed up. That is a shot in the arm for me. Mm-hmm. And I absolutely love almost everything about it. Yeah. I'll stop right there.
Well, if you love almost everything about it, that's high praise, because anytime you put on a conference, there's going to be something that doesn't fit for everyone. Usually there's more that doesn't fit than does. Yeah. Thank you for that, Mike Everett. Mike Kwong, you have kind of an unique perspective this year, because the Nelson Nash Institute, as Mike talked about, they started to tighten it up and put some guardrails and some checkpoints in that process. And you've been going through that, and we got to celebrate you as now a Nelson Nash Institute practitioner. For our listeners, can you explain a little bit about what goes into becoming a practitioner?
Sure. I mean, the first thing, obviously, is that you would enroll into the program. And, it really is a course. Originally, Nelson's 10-hour course, but they've, I think, added more background to it. The material, they'll send you a big binder, right? And they'll give you access into the portal that gives all these different videos that go with the binder. But there's a lot of background information about Austrian economics and general economic environment that, infinite banking was kind of sprung from. So that was really great, information that we don't always talk about, obviously, when we discuss IBC, but that's kind of the background or, landscape that was, evolved from. And, it's a deep dive. It really is into the specifics of IBC, even the policies, the insurance companies' backgrounds, histories, and the way that they structure the policies so that they work, and how the PUAs work versus the base premiums. So I really
Hmm.
enjoy the technical aspects of that, to understand it's not just platitudes and theories, but they're getting to the nuts and bolts of it. So it was really like empowering to know not just that it works, but how and why. I thought was great. And then of course there's a culminating, test you have to pass. You take online, and Mike Everett has a great story there, but that test is 115 questions. It's multiple choice, but it's a serious deal, and I recommend anyone really wants to take it to the next level, do that. Yeah.
Did you set a new record for top score on that test, Kwong?
I don't know, but I kind of, wanted to really make sure I made it before the think tank, and I did.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Getting it done was more of a priority than how high of a score you got, for sure.
Yeah.
You had an interview as well.
What's that?
Did you have an interview as well?
Yeah, there's an interview, part of that. They want to, it's not just scoring a test, grade or anything like that. I mean, it really speaks to the integrity of the process, I feel. They want to know who you are, right? It's not just
Yeah.
about IBC, but are you going to be, trusted enough to carry on that message, so I think that's great. It's not a closed society, but at the same time, there's high standards that have to be met. And you can't just, be mouthing off about IBC, as a practitioner, certainly. So I really appreciated that. I joke it's kind of to keep the riffraff out, right? But it's
Yeah.
also nice to, like I said, Mike mentioned the community. You have a community now, because a lot of people
Well,
to IBC, and they're like the only person in their circles that know about it. And
that's right. Well, we're carrying on. You said something, the mantra of Nelson Nash.
Yeah.
This is truly why he wrote the book. Because he went to all of these different places and they all rejected it. And then all of a sudden he starts showing up. He goes, I suppose the only way we're going to take this to the masses is through life insurance agents. Look at Chris. He's shaking his head.
I wonder how Nelson felt about that, because he tried to hit it at the education level at the universities, colleges,
Oh, yeah.
etc. That didn't go. Tried it with the financial gurus. That didn't go. So he had to come to us lowly.
He even went to a ton of life insurance companies, and they rejected it as well.
Yeah.
That's why he came to the you and me level.
So let's open this up a little bit more, bring in the rest of the crew, and talk about this think tank specifically. And what were the themes, the takeaways? Like, if you just looked at big picture of this think tank, what were the things that those who participated and attended would walk away and be refreshed of, reminded of, or inspired of?
Who's gonna go first? I'll go.
Get a quick start in there.
Yeah, no, right? So
Yeah.
I obviously am not in the life insurance business, not an agent, not doing the program, but from a client's perspective, I have the privilege and honor to kind of tag along and follow with you guys for 2 years in a row. And even as a user, from a user perspective, that was tremendously helpful, because I got to see how this community support each other, so that the information out there can get sensationalized. That's everything on YouTube, everything on TikTok. They only have 10 seconds to get your attention. So I get the clickbait tendencies out there, but to come to the actual think tank from the perspective of a client, to see like these people really care. They're there to really wanting to change people's lives. So when I said tears, it wasn't just about us. You saw other practitioners, in tears with the lives that they've touched. And it was just really impressive, because it wasn't like they weren't there to put on a show for their clients. I think I was one of their clients, in the room. It was just really just I've been to a lot of sales conferences and whatnot, and this is different.
Yeah.
That's definitely what I got out of it.
Yeah, I think, they always send out a survey at the end of the event. And, David Stearns always makes a comment. He's like, well, this is all going to be positive feedback, right? I'm just looking for that positive reinforcement. And we all chuckle, or whatever. But I will honestly say, I think it was an extremely well done, event. Chris, you mentioned that not everything is perfect in all events. And, certainly if you want to be nitpicky, but I think the overall theme of the entire weekend, or the couple of days that we were all together, was truly and honestly like bringing it back to Nelson Nash and centering around the book and centering around the core message. And David, in his opening talk on the first day, right after Richard gave his little intro, he talked about how Nelson had eventually narrowed his lane so narrow that it was only infinite banking, but it was a cavern. It wasn't a valley. It was a cavern. It was deep, and it was, wide. It was not wide reaching, because his focus had become so central around infinite banking and spreading that message. And I think that was a reinvigoration for me, because I know that that's what our team does as well. We stay in our lane as we talk. We enjoy being the trusted source to our clients for infinite banking and infinite banking only.
Absolutely. Yeah. Shelley, there were 3 words that I took away, that kind of just general feels that I got from people that spoke and just engaging with others. I'm curious if any of these 3 spoke to you and what you felt like was kind of those core messages. One was the simplicity of IBC in the message. The second one is to speak truth. And the third was to serve our clients. Those were the 3 that really stood out to me: is make it simple, be truthful, and serve your clients. Can you speak to, did any of those resonate with you, or were there other themes or messages that resonated with you?
I mean, I feel like you just said everything I wanted to say, so I'm done. No, I feel like Nelson's legacy was reiterated throughout the whole thing. Like, his legacy is all of that. And I'm so grateful. And I actually spoke to several of the speakers after they spoke, thanking them for making that the central part of their message, and thanking them, making sure we all know to keep that the central part of our message, but not just us, future generations. So teaching this generation to teach the next generation to teach the next generation, and keep it there. Right. Mike said earlier, from the beginning of how Ed and I started till now, nothing has changed. Man, appreciate that. Like, how can anything change when IBC is a message of truth, that it does stand the test of time? It's simple, it's true, it solves problems. And what could be simpler than IBC? I mean, it is all of those things, and it's what Nelson stood for. And I can remember, I'm so grateful I got to meet him and give him a hug, because he's somebody who stood for truth, who wouldn't back down from it, boldly proclaimed the truth, wanted everyone to hear the truth, know the truth, and have the opportunity to live in that. Yeah. And so, what a legacy. And I guess the one more word I would throw in there is giver. That's another theme from so many people. And I know it's the mindset we have as a team. What can we give, not what can we get? And it's amazing to be part of that kind of vision.
On that note of giver, it is, being at the think tank is like this pool of sharing. There are ideas being exchanged left and right. There's accountability even. Like there were folks that came up and talked to me about a couple of things, and questioning and wondering. And so there's a community of people who are really trying to keep this message pure. Yeah. I'm curious, just show of hands, how many of you spent time sharing or teaching with somebody else in the hallways or on the side, or even this week afterwards. I personally have had several phone calls this week from other people saying, hey, could I attend the boot camp as an agent? Could I come and watch that? I was able to connect one of our Spanish speaking clients with a Spanish speaking new practitioner who is doing a Spanish translation of Becoming Your Own Banker. And she wants Allie, shout out to you. She wants Allie. She wanted to know if Allie would be willing to read it with her Spanish background. And Allie, of course, agreed. So the connections and the ongoing relationships and the sharing of ideas. How many of you have had those experiences at the think tank? And Crawford's not raising his hand, but Crawford, how many people? No, well, and also you have an extra layer because you've got people coming to you because of the software.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was actually just looking back. I've had a couple of folks reach out about the software. I spoke to one of the gentlemen in his team yesterday, or day before yesterday, excuse me. He was chomping at the bit. As soon as I sent him the link to sign up, I don't think it was 3 minutes later he had already picked a time and we were on the road. But I also was just looking at the webinar from Monday night, and there were 5 practitioners or maybe agents that attended the webinar on Monday night out of the 12 or 15 that showed up that evening. And that's a huge compliment, I think, to our team's focus on Nelson Nash and keeping it simple and how we put people through a process. We've talked about our process in multiple podcasts, and I think it stands to repeat that it's an important part of why our team is structured the way we are, with the different people that you see on the screen and those who couldn't join us today. And we have a process because our fearless leaders, Mike and Chris, have learned over the course of time that if we create this process and we help people flow through that process, then the results for the client are better. And that's really the goal. Is everything we do is circled around our clients. And Chris even has a drawing for that.
Of course I do.
He has drawings. He has drawings for everything.
I dream in drawings.
Can I give you some feedback on the process? I'll tell you, as a client, as a quick start client, at first, I think we started being a client in 2018. I think we reached out to you. At first, that process frustrated me to no end.
We know.
I was thinking, do they want me as a client or not? Why are they putting me? I already, my check's already written, right? I'm ready to go. But now in hindsight, after being educated all these years, I get it now. I get why there has to be a process. It's like you guys were saying, it's a dance. You are seeing if this client is worthy of this message.
That is such a strong word, Pei. Worthy. Are they worthy of this message? I love how you said that.
I get it now.
As a quick start, Pei and I are totally aligned on the quick start. And I remember when we were thinking about this process and I'll just say the internal frustration that I personally experienced, because I was going, this thing is not moving near fast enough. But I'm going to tell you when it all came full circle for me. The infinite banking concept is a text for a 10-hour course of instruction. And I'm going, 10 hours. That is not in my DNA to spend that kind of time and energy. So I'm going, why do we need to create this whole thing? But then I think, imagine if, and now I got to back up just a little bit. Imagine if I would have learned about this when I was 21 to 25 years old.
Yeah.
And the change that it could have made to my life today.
Yeah.
So, in the midst of all of that, we talk about a number of different things, but because most people are stuck on the woulda, coulda, shouldas.
Mm.
And I always tell people, I said, here's what you got to do.
You got to
You gotta
draw
draw-
that line in the sand.
You got to draw a line in the sand, and you got to go that way. Because if and we've all done it, by the way, we've all got stuck on the woulda, coulda, shouldas.
Yeah.
So it's important that we just take Nelson's message. What did he say? It's ridiculously simple.
That's right. That's right.
Hearing Richard try to do the Southern drawl was funny.
Yeah, hearing a Canadian do the Southern accent.
Ridiculously simple, eh?
Hey, Mike Kwong, I think you will be a good person to speak to this in kind of that, it's a dance and not a fight. And the context I want to get is our clients get really, really excited about IBC, and they attend our boot camps and they read Nelson's book and they do the webinar, and they're all jazzed up and they want to go talk to their friends and family and other people about it. And that, I would say, generally doesn't go so well, right?
Yep.
But there was a message about a dance versus a fight. Can you speak to that a little bit and then personalize it? What your experience has been with that?
Absolutely. And that was one of my takeaways, I mean, because we do get really, excited and invested in IBC, and when you've got a number of policies like we have, we know it's our life, right? So, that whole dance, not a fight thing, sometimes people will counter, right? IBC have questions are always welcome, but some people will try to malign it, and they've already been, brainwashed in a different way, or they'll come at you with other, competing, types like of insurance, IUL, and claim that that's IBC. And it's really, I hate to say, it's infuriating to me, because I feel it's attacking or undermining, at the very least, what IBC is and should be. So I have that tendency to, fight or flight, right? There's no dance in that, right? It's fight or flight. And I'm not one to run on that, So in my experience, I've always kind of been quick to fight. And that's not right. It's not okay. It's a human tendency. But again, it's one of those human problems. But I think the message, again, is it's a dance, not a fight. And especially, for agents or, people trying to share IBC successfully, you won't win by, beating their argument or proving that, their company product is not as good. Okay, you win the argument, but you lose the battle. And sometimes you lose a relationship with that person, right? Or you never get that prospect. So it was good to be reminded of that for me,
I know. Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Oh, no, I was just going to say a phrase that pairs with that I've heard recently is that grace costs you nothing. And I think that when it comes to those battles, like it's hard because I get that way too. We all get defensive. And I think it's really important for me and, maybe others to remember that, giving these people grace, this is a big rut that we're getting them out of, right? They're nervous. Like Chris investigated this for 9 months, didn't have any room for error. He's told his story so many times, and it just runs in my head all the time that he finally took that leap of faith, and because of that, we have to be willing, because we trust it, we get it, we live it, we're immersed in it. So for us, it's just like, hello. And we have to allow grace for those who are still investigating and learning, because it can be a big shift in our thinking. So
I'm curious. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to right along those lines, and I'm dovetailing with what Kwong said and Crawford said. Because of the education that we have spent hours upon hours, thousands of hours of educating ourselves with IBC. We already know where people are going to be 1 year, 5 years, 8 years down the road. We already know this. They don't.
Yeah.
And so in the midst of all of that, because of the way people are geared, they're used to being sold something.
Yeah.
but we are an educational organization. So we have to actually do what we say that we are. We're an educational organization. This is why the webinars and the boot camps are free. This is why we provide a step-by-step strategy for them. But yet, going back to what Kwong said, the picture that came into my mind, it's the wrong picture, but I'm going to say it anyway. When we go down fishing and we throw, some bait and a hook out there. This is the wrong picture, but it'll kind of come full circle here in a second. There are certain people that, because they will take the steps and go through our educational process, they will grab the hook immediately and come to shore because they are ready to be educated. But then you get the bigger, and I'm going to use a bigger fish, where they are tugging on that. They are fighting every bit of you trying to bring them to shore to the educational piece of this. And at one point in time, once that line gets taut enough and you know that it's not going to happen, you clip the line and you let the fish go, because he's going to wear himself out at one point in time. So I'm bringing this full circle. I cannot tell you the number of clients that I have brought into the IBC conversation, the fold, so to speak. I have spent hours upon hours of educating them. We used to call it spoon feeding. And yet they walked away. And for whatever reason, but I'm going to tell you that 50+% of those people came back to the table after they were completely worn out in the IUL, the VUL, term invest the difference. They were completely worn out with the noise that is out there, and found out when they came back to the table, what we were sharing, not just 5 years, not just 10 years ago, but what we're still sharing, the same message today. But yet we, as an organization, I'm bragging on us now, we have perfected the message of IBC to the point where we can actually bring IBC on a silver platter to people, and for them to be able to come to the table and gather and eat and take as much as they want. They can go away and they can come back to the table as many times as they want and still be able to say, golly, what these people are teaching is right, and it's right for me, and it's right for my family. Once again, there are people out there that just will not come to the table, and I'm okay with that. That's been probably the hardest thing for me to do, is to watch people walk away from what we're offering, but yet it's the right thing to do, because people come to the IBC intersection at the time that they're supposed to, when they're ready to learn and they're ready to invest in their own personal education of the infinite banking concept.
Yeah.
So just for the sake of time, we're gonna bring this around full circle and tie a bow on this for our listeners. What I'd love is just quick little, it can be one or two, or someone says something and it comes back to you. What were your personal takeaways from this year's think tank? What was a message? What was a comment? What was an idea? What were things that you took away that you were like, yes, that's helpful to me?
Dude, I have two things. One is, I really want to help clients who don't know who Nelson Nash is. Maybe they've read the book, maybe they haven't. If they want to know who he is, I really plan to push people to just consider watching his YouTube video. This is Nelson Nash. Can't recommend it enough. It kind of gives you some insight to everything. It's very meaty, very, very good to watch and encouraging. The other thing is this book. I actually just talked with a client yesterday, and several clients who say, I feel like I've been doing this and I hear you guys on podcasts, all this. I feel like I'm not doing something right. There's something I don't know. And it's that cognitive dissonance happening, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
you know, some of us have confessed it's been a minute since I've read this book. So I pull it back out and start reading it again. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that is so good. And I've read it many times before, but it's so, so good. So many amazing truths in it, and it doesn't take long to read it. So
Yeah.
I really tend to very strongly encourage people who say, I'm missing something, then read the book again. And if you haven't
Absolutely.
read the book, then of course you're missing so much. You got to read the book. You got to read Becoming Your Own Banker.
Okay, who else? Takeaways.
I mean,
Hi.
simplicity was definitely one of the biggest things that was said, and if multiple people say that, I think that's a good, affirmation that that was a good theme. I also think that the other thing I took away from it was, continue learning, continue reading. Ryan Griggs
Mhm.
wrote a new book, and I'm very excited to read it just from learning and diving deeper into Nelson's principles through the minds of other practitioners.
Simple.
Yeah.
Everything was simple. And really the overarching message was Nelson Nash. It was
Yeah.
simple and it was about Nelson. That was really my gut level takeaways. And I think that we do a really great job of keeping it simple for people, but yet giving praise to Nelson for what he invested in helping people with becoming your own banker.
And I'll just add one last thing about, if I may, community. Have that, communication with others. Whether they're clients or other practitioners or
Mhm.
your family that may be interested in doing it. Don't be afraid to talk about it, right? And also don't be afraid to ask for help, right? If you're a new agent or someone into the business, lean on those who have done it before, right? Mike Everett,
Mhm.
right? Just like that. I mean, and he doesn't charge anything, just the time. But don't be afraid to ask for help, because this is not a lone venture. It shouldn't have to be. And there's more and more people that are getting on board. So that really heartened me.
Yeah.
Hey, from your
I
perspective, takeaway?
for sure the community piece, not just as you guys are agents, but also, I am blessed to surround myself with a community of people who are all kind of doing the same thing. And it really has changed my life, because before I used to get frustrated, whereas now I feel invigorated. Like just yesterday, we were invited to, fellow IBCer friends, neighbors that we brought into the circle. And, we got to hang out and we got to have we're on the same wavelength. And it's so rare to find. And it wasn't pretentious, or it wasn't even awkward, because we just got right into that conversation and it was fine. So I'm learning to be protective of the community, and I'm learning to be like, you know, uh, this is not for everyone, which is okay. This is the truth, and and this is actually what Ryan Griggs wrote in my book, which is like, I love it. I got a copy of his book and I got him signed, and he said, the truth shall set you free. That's it.
Amen. Mm.
Yeah. For me, one, we work hard at scrubbing our language. But in a larger group in that setting, I was reminded of sometimes we can scrub our language within our own little community, our little LSL community, and we're just in a vacuum, right? And so one of the presenters, it kind of reminded me of like, things that sound like they were from the Bible, sound like Jesus said them, but they didn't, right? It's like, well, that sounds almost like it's from the Bible, but it's not actually. Well, one of the presenters did something like that. He put up these phrases, says, has anybody ever heard or said this? And many of us raised our hand, and he's like,
Yeah.
did Nelson ever say that? Nope.
Nope.
And so you can have infiltration of comments, phrases, sayings that aren't, they sound Nelsonish, they sound like BYOB, but they're not.
Right.
And they're not truth. They're not right.
Yeah. And so it's a reminder to me of, before these lips open and I say something, I want to make sure that I'm really repeating the message in the true form that it was relayed to us from Nelson. The other thing that jumped out at me, and this was again inspired by one of the other presenters, was, are we having family IBC meetings? What are we doing within our own homes to pass on this message to our children and their children? And so that reinvigorated me about inside our own four walls with our family of what are we doing? We've done some good things, but I know we can always improve on that. So any other thoughts that come before we wrap this up? Okay.
Take advantage of all the materials that the NNI Life Success and Legacy offer. There's a ton of resources. Read, watch, listen, and ask questions, because the only thing that you can't do is you can't learn through osmosis. You have to invest. You have to dive in. You need to get in the weeds, and we're here to help you. And those resources are available. And I think that the takeaway from the boot camp, or from the think tank, for me, on top of the simple and all that stuff, is you got to keep learning.
And I want to plug the IBC initiative, the podcast.
Yes.
Guess who just came out? Whose episode just came out?
We just reposted all that. Yeah.
Our very own Michael King Everett.
Come
on. Yeah, Crawford, that's a really great point, that not just our website and our podcast and the information we provide, our books and all that, but go to the Nelson Nash Institute. There is a wealth of information available. In fact, when we do our boot camp, we're getting ready to do a live one, and we have our website on the slide, and we've got the Nelson Nash Institute on the slide. We're like, hey, you need to go and check this out just as much.
Yep.
Because there's good resources there. So I want to thank all of you. I personally had an amazing time with you people. And because we do work remotely, we don't get to be in the same space and have conversations and hug and, as Pei said, cry and just have great times together. So thank you all for taking time away from your lives, from your family, your homes, to come together to share in this concept of infinite banking, and also just deepen our own personal relationships with each other. So thank you for that. To our listeners, check out the Nelson Nash Institute website. I'm going to plug them today, right? Check out the Nelson Nash Institute website. Go to it. In fact, they're even working, and I'm really excited about this, they're working on an application of artificial intelligence, AI, and I believe it's going to be called Ask Nelson Nash. And so they're going to take all the information and the videos and the teachings that Nelson Nash did, and you can access that even though Nelson isn't with us anymore. I'm really excited to see what that looks like.
Yeah.
To our listeners, check us out at lifesuccesslegacy.com, and we will see you on the next episode.